proof that you can hear me?
Yep, you're great,
There you
Mike.
go. Thank you. Okay, great. All right. So, hey, that's a bad headshot of me. Next slide. All right. So, what I'm going to show you today and is really a technology, process, people, and software solution that we developed after we experienced what we all experienced in March of 2020, where COVID had made the workplace dangerous, which we had never had before. So I know we were all shocked by that. So what we did was we, like a lot of folks, had to sort of rapidly move to people working from home, and rapidly move to change safety protocols in some jurisdictions, in order to allow folks to come to work and to understand what was going on. So a lot of companies got really caught and just weren't able to migrate to home quickly enough. And at that point, really, March, April, May, most of our clients or ourselves, we just wanted operational continuity. That's really all we cared about, right? And some of these issues of productivity, security, and other performance just kind of went, I think went by the wayside. We saw it too, and we felt like, as things sort of settled last May, we started to have some ideas about how it could change. Next slide. And so, why do we need a solution that helps us deal with what the pandemic did to us, which is to rapidly push us all to work from home? And what we sort of concluded is that going forward, work from home in a reliable, dependable, productive, performant manner is just going to be a part of the contact center manager's playbook, right? I mean, it's just a tool in your arsenal you're going to need. Every RFP we've seen since RFP started flowing again in May of last year, June of last year, said, what are your plans if you need to work from home again, right? So that's really how it worked. And we thought about that deeply and developed this. Next slide, please. So our core question was, how do call center managers work long-term in an at-home environment or a mixed at-home environment without knowing that their agents' at-home work environments are secure? And our goal was to create a pure PCI replication at home, that can ensure long-term at-home security and performance, no matter what the pandemic or the future brings. That was the goal. So PCI replication at home. And so this is what we invented. Next slide. So we call it Agent at Home. And I think this is where, Casey, I believe there's a next slide before we get to the video. So I wanted to kind of break this down for you because it is a bit of a turn, right? Where an outsourcing company is sort of looking at it and saying, all right, how do we do this for ourselves first and then for our clients? And this is kind of what we came up with. So we are combining a piece of hardware, specially designed piece of hardware, an assembled piece of hardware, software that works directly with the hardware and creates some monitoring, as well as then the people. And the idea was that we wanted the agent to be able to plug in a specialty device that we manufactured and sent to them, and actually be able to plug that device into their television in order to work. Okay, so specialty devices you see on the bottom left, agent working from their home. If they don't have a computer, most people would have a television. Let them just plug it into their television and work. So let's take a look at the video. That's me right now. And there's Hudson doing what he does best. Okay, so let's stop showing the amazing next videos on YouTube. Great. Oh, that's interesting. Casey, try and bring the deck back up and then go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so what we showed you was an integrated solution where the agent, as you can see on the left, has got this specialty device, and that specialty device is singularly authenticated and essentially locked or linked directly to our servers, right? And so that's why we were able to monitor the agent in real time. You saw that there are actually two cameras in the agent environment. One was sort of this face cam, and the other is this environment cam monitoring her environment so that we can see what she's doing. Specifically, what we're worried about is you saw what she did, which is to pull that mobile phone out, even though she's probably just answering a text message, you know, and possibly doing something malicious with it. It does have integrated biometric security, at least with fingerprint. So, you know, when the agent receives the device, there is a setup process for that biometric security to link, you know, that agent's biometric and to specialty code it, so give it a specialty signature to their device. Then that device is then connected to this monitoring server, which collects all this data, you know, from the agent, you know, obviously with internet traffic going through a VPN for client applications, and then passes that along to a couple different places, right? So the images itself, there's an image processing stack that exists on a separate server that allows the images to be viewed for further analysis if a suspected breach is if a breach is suspected, and then, you know, the images are stored either for 15 or 30 days, generally no more. On the analyst side, there's actually a suite of analyst monitoring applications, which then allow a security analyst, which we showed, to watch an agent working in real time, to see their desktop, and then to monitor and control them if there's a suspected breach. Okay, so I wanted to sort of show this diagram to help you understand the moving pieces. But at its core, if you kind of saw me show sort of the people, the software, or sorry, the device, the software, and the people, you can kind of see how it lines up, where the device enables a lot of this to happen because it's a device that we specialty manufacture. Then the servers provide a lot of the backbone to make sure that the data the device is outputting is interpreted correctly. And then there's the people on the other side, the analysts, making sure it works. Let's go on to the next slide. So our PCI and our CISA certified folks have analyzed this and said that this actually qualifies for PCI compliance, but at home, right? So let's talk about what we think PCI compliance is. Next slide. I boiled down, next slide, please. I boiled down PCI compliance into kind of three types of security. Nope, there you go. So one is InfoSec, right? Information security. So that is, am I getting access to the information that I really only should have access to? Two is EnviroSec, which is securing the work environment, right? Which is the whole point of those environment cams and of the face cam. And then third is the PeopleSec, right? Which is only those authorized to access the information or doing the work are actually doing the work, which is why the biometrics are there. So you combine InfoSec, EnviroSec, and PeopleSec in the home, and you can achieve, we believe you can achieve PCI compliance. Now, if you think about, you know, your own operating environments, your own call centers, if you're in a PCI compliant environment, you can kind of see the same things happening, right? You've obviously got information security because, you know, everyone's working on PCs that are monitored and specially configured by your IT department. Your EnviroSec is by the environment itself, especially if you have secure workrooms or secure floors where people have other, you know, where they can only get in if they're authorized. And of course, they're prevented from bringing phones and other devices in that could compromise security. And then finally, PeopleSec, which is, you know, in all of our centers, we have biometric security on every room. And within the facility, so only those authorized can get in. So you can kind of see that, you know, with just a really all kind of making that specialty device, we're really able to get to PCI compliance, but in the home environment. So what I'm going to go through now, next slide, please, are some of the specific features that make this work. So on the InfoSec side, because it's a specialty device, we code the browser, right? I mean, I still think the majority of our work is going through browsers, but every device that goes out to agents to use in their home is already coded with whatever the build is needed for the client to make sure that they only have access to the applications and even the URLs that make sense. So we actually, take Linux, browsers, and we use those because we can obviously, split them off and control them. Next slide. On the EnviroSec side, we get into a lot of watching, people's workspace, watching their face cams. Face cam is probably seems invasive, and I'll certainly address that in the question section, because when we were presenting this, that's always the first question. You really could see a lot. I mean, you could see a lot if an agent is logged on and looking off screen. You really know that, something else may be happening. Someone else may be there that's not allowed to be in the workspace. Or in general they're just distracted, right? And so this EnviroSec is not just about preventing attack vectors, it's also about doing the same thing you would do on a production floor, which is if you see someone goofing off or if you see someone not really focused on their work, the supervisor or the floor manager would redirect them. And so the same thing can really happen here in real time, since we get new, the images refresh every 4 seconds. Next slide. And on the PeopleSec, this one may seem pretty simple, but it was actually interesting to try and find a biometric authentication device that you could then tie into everything. And so that became an interesting piece of it, where we kind of pushing that biometric down into the agent's home. Again, I think there are some security concerns here for folks. Certainly our agents understand and do it in the facility. So to do it at home when they're getting ready to start their day makes sense as well. Next slide. And so, one of the other key things we do is to make sure that the solution itself has the ability to fully control the agent environment. This is one of the major components of being PCI compliant. So that is already built into the solution, the management solution that we built at the server side to manage all of these different devices. Next slide. And so, this kind of gives you a little bit more detailed breakdown of a lot of the InfoSec things that you may or may not be doing inside your centers today: browser restrictions, limited tab access rule. There's a bunch of OS level security protocols that we've got in there. Clipboard and bookmark prohibitions. Again, once we kind of departed from this concept, because we batted around a little while, it's like, well, why don't we just get them a PC and configure the PC? And at the end of the day, we decided that no, a device that we really configured, that we actually put hands on and then ship to them, was really the best way to do it. And that created the most secure device operating. So next slide. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all just worried about operational continuity, right? But as June and July of last year wore on, productivity numbers were really showing a problem, and it led to massive customer service issues across the globe. Luckily, I think clients just sort of dealt with it because we were in the middle of a situation that our society hadn't seen in a century. But at the end of the day, we kind of had to get back to normal work. And this solution, more than anything else, positively impacts quality and productivity at home. So what this does for contact center managers is, before, working from home could have been a privilege. If you were good enough at it, if you did it well enough, you could work from home. And there was this trust, that had to be established first. This kind of removes the need to establish that trust, because now you can really monitor them and make sure that they're doing what they need to do in the daily course of their jobs. Next slide. I kind of talked about this. Let's next slide. So one of the key ways that we do this is, you have the ability to just connect to your agent's workspace, and to take control of the agent's desktop if needed. We certainly use this for tech support, as you would think, but it can also be used to kind of take a look in if you're investigating a suspected breach and make sure that they really are staying productive with what they're doing. Next slide. There's the clock in and clock out mechanism for the agent is no longer tied to the physical place and time as we do today. It's now pushed into the operating system and tied to the operating system. So, since we control the device, we know when the device, i.e. the person, since it's a one-to-one relationship, is logged in, when they're idle, when they're not. And so that level specifically of idle management of, getting an alert when someone's keyboard or mouse is idle for too long, is very helpful, for floor managers to make sure that their at-home staffs, are doing their work correctly. Next slide. One of the other key things that we do is you can actually look at images. We've got 2 cameras plus the desktop, so you can see the progression of what's going on, how an agent navigates, begin their day, look at specific things, whatever it is, to really see how they're using the environment and track down anything that may be not permitted. And so that screen capture is very, very helpful, to helping the analysts or the floor managers understand what's going on with their agents and whether or not they're doing their work as needed. Next slide. And then I think we actually did this one. This may be a duplicate. So let's move, next slide. And then here you can sort of see, it's a good example of where an agent, may do something like that. The thing that we wanted to show here is that you can really get the idea, you'd be surprised in today's world how much you can see what's going on simply from the fact that somebody's not staring right at the camera, that they may be looking down or up or to the side, but knowing that they're just staring directly at the camera, is really, really key, and really communicates a lot in this day and age. I don't know about you, but I've been on Zoom calls. I've been on Zoom calls where I'll like be talking to someone and I'll see them be very distracted and I'll get a little annoyed, that they're wasting my time by being distracted and not being present with me. And I will say something. So this is the equivalent of that. Next slide. And then next slide. So from a monitoring standpoint, we obviously, this sort of summarizes what you've got. We've got sort of all that real-time monitoring with the images, with the keyboard and mouse tracking, and then obviously with any suspected breaches. We built into the solution a ton, that agent dashboard, excuse me, the analyst dashboard. We built in a ton of remote capabilities. So remote access to the agent's OS, override the operation of the agent's OS. We can send warnings and notifications in the case of problem of emergency. This is helpful not just for an individual agent, but you can also do it to a group of agents, as needed. And then we built in a lot of really robust measures if there is a suspected breach. Remote shutdown, remote lockdown, override operations, no bypass, which means that they can't get to anything in the operating system if we flip that switch. And then agents would need to revalidate, with a live person in our security center after a suspected breach happens. So, the solution right now actually has analysts, sitting. We have, like we showed, an analyst sitting at a desk monitoring the I guess it's about a dozen so now agents we have at home using the solution. So that we know if they're doing their jobs and we know their breaches, and we're seeing really good data, telling us that that it's working. Interestingly enough, next slide please. The agents like it too. So they just feel like they can do their work, they can then go back to their lives, and they're really supported. And I think that was a surprise to us. So they have the ability, for example, to notify headquarters if there's an outage. And then if there's an outage at their location, there's a validation procedure. To give you an idea of what it takes to sort of set up, we do have onboarding prior to login. So there is like this setup screen that really does lock the device to the person, and to the client, so that it is secure along those 3 areas of InfoSec, EnviroSec, and PeopleSec. And then finally, we, for ourselves, we have audit reports that we have to submit to the clients that we're using this with to tell them, hey, what's going on here, because they're very curious about how it works compared to, folks that we have in our centers. So it's a really interesting sort of total solution for monitoring a workforce at home in a way that makes a lot more sense, and still ensures productivity and quality can happen, but at it, in an at-home environment. Next slide. So this is just, a couple, sorry, this is kind of the deck we use for everything. So reporting and support. Next slide. We've got some just reporting features in there. We actually log our breaches right in the system so that they're coded to the images. And, and so that we can really, we have, when we need to escalate the breach or report it out to somebody, we can show the images and show what happened and report accordingly. So that all that monitoring reporting is built right into the dashboard for the security and management analysts. Next slide. And then just to be clear, since we are arguing that this is PCI compliant, but at home, obviously this is already inside our regular PCI compliant data centers. So you kind of have it on both ends to make sure that there's really no potential breach for client data. Next slide. As you saw, everything's pretty easy to assemble and configure. It comes to the agent out of the box. We've got, this is our own product, so we've got our developers that built it, and we'll go through customizations with various clients as needed so that they can deploy the solution. So I believe next slide, that is everything. There's Scott's number, but you can kind of stop showing the slide now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat or the Q&A over to the right. Mike, I have one question. I know you said that your agents tended to like it. At the beginning, was there any, trepidation? Were they kind of concerned about it, or did they adapt quickly?
I mean, I think it definitely took a while for people to get used to being on camera, for, their entire day. I mean, think about it. We're all on camera our entire day anyway these days. I mean, I know I am, except when I go to the men's room, maybe. And so, we definitely had those privacy concerns. The difference between, I think, the way we live our lives and the way the agent lives our lives is that we have control about when we're on camera, right? And they don't necessarily have control unless they go idle or log off or say, hey, I'm on break, right? Then the system shuts down, the camera shut down, etc. We have had agents forget to log off, for sure. We've had agents forget to log off, and as we were developing the solution, and so we've had to sort of go back and not just instruct them, but also, delete some images that, shouldn't have made it to the server. So that's definitely happened. It's been, there haven't been too many of those incidents, and in the end, we just were able to tighten up our code, tighten up our procedures, and we were able to prevent those things. I think initially agents, were a little concerned, but then I think a lot of people appreciate the flexibility of being able to work from home. And if you think about it, many agents were happy just to save the money on commuting, right? So I think to the agents, there's an economic benefit that that agents at this level, whether it's offshore or domestically, because this solution is actually deployed in 2 locations for us, both here in the US as well as offshore, at home. We use it both, people use it at home offshore and people use it at home here in the US. And ultimately they for the job that they were getting, they appreciated the freedom they were getting as a part of this. And so that's why it was okay with them. I think this will not, not every client is comfortable with this. Not every client, I mean, some clients just don't like the privacy aspect of it. They're just more comfortable with the workplace as it exists, and we kind of show up and we put on a shirt and we do what we're going to do, and we're in our work zone, and then we go home and we're in our home zone, and some people are just comfortable with that, and that's fine. More and more are getting comfortable with this, and as long as the parameters are there to protect the agent's privacy, we think it works, and it's been working for us.
Right. Anybody else have any questions? Well, if not, you can, if you think of something later, just let us know, and I can, if you don't have Mike or Scott's information, just let me know and I can certainly pass that along. And of course, we'll have this recording up in a few days too that you can share as well. So, all right. Well, Mike, we appreciate your time, and thanks to everyone for participating today. If you want to continue some discussions, feel free to stay online. You can just turn on your camera and mic and join one of the tables here in this Remo room. But we hope to see you at another PACE event very soon. And again, thanks, Mike, and everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.